So if you can, Caleb, give me Barrett Sallee's take on one Nico
Iamaleava.
being a starter to start this season. I've said I thought it's possible after August, but I don't think it's possible at the start of the season. Um, Tell me what Barrett Sallee of CBS Sports said.
This is what Barrett Sallee, he calls these his SEC spring football overreactions. And it's Nico Iamaleava will win the battle for starting QB and become a star. And he says the hotshot quarterback who enrolled early looked like a star in the spring game, went 8 of 16 for 112 yards, and dropped several dimes that looked more like NFL throws than those of a freshman. That completion percentage should have been much higher due to several drops. Fellow contender Joe Milton III won't be consistent during fall camp. And Coach Josh Heupel will insert his prize prospect into the top spot on the depth chart in the opener versus Virginia, and Iamaleava won't look back. He will become a star.
Iamaleava is not going to be the starter, and I realize these are overreactions, and these are supposed to get us talking, and I get that. He's not going to be the starter this season. I will still, but I'm going to hedge my bet just a little bit. I still would not be surprised if he won the starting job, but I'm not going to say that I think it will happen. I did before talking to some people during and after spring camp. Barring an injury, I think Joe Milton completes the season as the starter, but I wouldn't be surprised. Would it be fair to say you would be surprised if Nico Iamaleava, if he is the eventual starter? Remind me how to say that, Nico.
Iamaleava.
Iamaleava.
I would be next level shocked. Honestly, if you were going to, if he's the starter in the opener, if you were going to do an overreaction, you would actually do the other one, because Nico Iamaleava, I don't think it's a big deal because I think he was learning and developing and it was just his first spring, but he didn't blow you away during spring ball. I think the shocking thing was that Joe Milton, to every reporter that was there, and Josh Ward told us about this, was firmly ahead of Nico the entire spring camp. It was very clear that he was better. And I thought Nico was going to be ready to compete with him on day one. He wasn't. So if you were going to do an overreaction, which I wouldn't react this way either, but if you were going to do an overreaction, the overreaction is that Nico Iamaleava is a bust. Now, that's not the accurate take, but I mean, it based on spring ball, the overreaction is closer to him being a bust than him starting for Virginia.
So message board says the spring game tamed the Milton hate from Dave. I never had Milton hate, but I'm going to tell you what I was told by somebody very close to the situation, why I've changed my tune just a little bit. And portions of the program brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, cityheatandair.com. Integrity matters. 50 years in the HVAC business there in Knoxville. You might not need a new unit that's going to cost thousands. You can get a unit repaired, or maybe you just need some coolant. City Heating and Air Conditioning. Integrity matters. cityheatandair.com. Caleb, I believe that Nico will not be the starter because of something that somebody very close to the situation told me. Nico showed up on campus and it got Joe Milton's attention. Okay. When he showed up in December, it's like, whoa, this guy's pretty good and living up to the hype. And I believe that was enough to get Joe Milton's attention based off what I was told from somebody very, very, very close to the situation. So if there was any lackadaisical approach that Milton might have heading into spring camp and off-season workouts, which nobody suggested there would be, but if there was any of that, that was gone the moment he saw Nico. And that was also gone the moment he saw Anthony Richardson go with the third pick in the NFL draft, and he can mimic that. So that's why I've hedged my bets. Spring game, a part of it, but I don't believe in any shape, form, or fashion that that Nico's going to start this season. In fact, I don't think he starts at all this season, barring injury. But unlike you, I wouldn't be shocked. I would be mildly surprised. So I'm hedging my bets a little bit.
That's fine. I would be shocked. The thing that throws me off is Dave, can I go through these? I kind of agree with a lot of Barrett Sally's over other overreactions, though.
Yeah, let me address a couple of things that's been put on the message board. This concerns me. I'm going to be real honest with you, and it's a great point by SEC scout guy. This poor kid has so much hype on him with all the NIL money speculation and people saying Heisman. If he is just an above-average quarterback, people are going to say he's a bust. You're right. If he's Joshua Dobbs, it's going to be a disappointment, and that is completely unfair.
No, it's not. Great quarterbacks live up to that hype. Peyton Manning was a 4-year Heisman favorite when he arrived at Tennessee. Didn't win it. No one says he was a bust. And then he was the number 1 draft pick and expected to live up to that. No one had more pressure than Peyton Manning as a quarterback.
Okay, so to the message board, if he mimics Joshua Dobbs' career, are you happy with that?
Oh, wait, that's a different question. We were talking about whether or not it's unfair to him that he has to live up to, that he has these expectations.
Well, it's unfair if he's looked at as a disappointment and he has Joshua Dobbs' career.
No, it's not.
I think it is.
It's not.
It is.
It's not. Joshua Dobbs was a 3-star and, for the record, had a pretty good career. But Joshua Dobbs, we're not considering. Joshua Dobbs you have to make a case for him as a top 5 quarterback in Tennessee history. Nico had better be a top 5 quarterback in Tennessee football history when he's done.
Top 5 quarterback in Tennessee history. Is he a disappointment if he's not a top 5 quarterback in Tennessee football history?
Yes.
I think that's unfair.
No, it's not.
I think top 10. I'll give you top 10. And are you a Iamaleava? Do you believe in?
Guys,
Let me ask the message board real quick and on Twitter as well. And go ahead and tell me, is it a disappointment if Nico has the exact same career that Joshua Dobbs has? I'm not talking about wins and losses. I'm talking about completions. I'm talking about touchdown passes. I'm talking about his ability to perform in the clutch. All of that, which Dobbs had with a terrible coach. So you would think he would have an upside that would be even better. That's not a disappointment if he has Joshua Dobbs' career.
That's exactly the point you just made, though. If he has Joshua Dobbs' career when he had Josh Heupel coaching him, whereas Josh Dobbs had that career with Butch Jones coaching him, I mean, that's a disappointment, Dave. Like, this is when Tim Tebow was at Florida. You were covering college football at the time. You remember how hyped of a recruit Tim Tebow was, right?
Yes.
Would it not have been a disappointment if Tim Tebow was not one of the greatest quarterbacks in Florida history?
Yes. He was kind of like LeBron. I mean, we heard about him when he was like a sophomore.
Nico to Heupel is like that. Not Nico just in general going to college, but Nico to Heupel is just like that.
Man,
he's playing in a system designed for him.
Yeah, I'm concerned. I mean, SC Scout guy says, honestly, I think it would be sort of a disappointment considering what we have seen of him so far. That is so tough. So tough, Caleb, on a young man. For him to be able to live up to that hype, you're talking top 5 quarterbacks of all time. So what do we got top 5 quarterbacks? We got obviously Manning. What?
I say, yeah, number 1 is Manning, is obvious, yeah.
Yeah.
I would say Manning, Schuler, Condridge, Hooker, Dobbs, Casey.
Yeah, I would put Clausen over Dobbs.
Yeah, okay. So Dobbs isn't even top 5 now. And
right. So if Nico slides in there at that 6th spot above Dobbs, but behind Clausen, Condridge, Manning, Schuler, I'm forgetting somebody.
Clausen, Condridge, Manning, Schuler, and Hooker.
Okay. If he slips in there at 6, you take that right now to the bank.
You take it, but that's not what you expect from him. I expect him to be better than Hooker. Okay. I'm very clear on that. If Hooker can do this in Josh Heupel's offense, Nico can. He's a better fit for the offense. I expect him to be better than who else did I expect him to be better than Casey, largely because Casey was labored under Randy Sanders, but Casey only completed like 55% of his passes his last year in 2003.
Well, the wise man's reading my mind. I think we're discounting Andy Kelly a little bit.
I think Andy Kelly was a great leader and a clutch player. Go back and look at the talent Andy Kelly had.
He was pretty crazy. Pretty insane.
We could have thrown to those receivers.
Click that like button. Be a part of the program. If you haven't subscribed, please do that. SC Scout Guy again says, and I love the fact that we've got, we're considered a Tennessee program, but we're SEC is the bottom line. And I love the fact that we get listeners and viewers from other schools. He says this all reminds me of the hype that Clowney had. Jadeveon Clowney. He is still the highest rated defensive recruit in Rivals history. Same thing. I mean, Jadeveon Clowney, it was almost as if he didn't have 18 to 20 sacks a season. He was going to be disappointment. And he's a very solid player. And I thought he was very good. Obviously, he was drafted high in the NFL. He lived up to the hype, but was he Will Anderson? No, I don't think he was.
Well,
Anderson.
We have to be fair with Jadeveon. Now, NFL, I'm not talking about Nico's NFL career because we're talking just college. Okay, Jadeveon in college, 2012, he was Will Anderson. Look at what he did in 2012. He should have been a Heisman contender.
He wasn't as good against the run, and I don't want to get into the minutia of football, but I think Will Anderson is much better than Clowney. But Clowney's going to get more pub because he's better rushing the passer. Okay,
well, what happened in Clowney's junior year, 2013, if we're forgetting, he had a massive drop-off from 2012 in his stats. Well, if you know South Carolina, and if to get a little more into the minutia, South Carolina was limited defensively. And he's a defensive end. You can run away from him. You can play on the other side. And so they literally designed their offenses, most teams, to make sure Clowney couldn't be as effective. They paid for that. South Carolina. So Clowney was more of a decoy his last year. That still worked. South Carolina had the best season in history because Clowney literally shut down one side of the field. This is like, I don't know, Deion Sanders' interception totals would drop his last few years with the Cowboys because you weren't throwing his way. And so
true.
Clowney was that with South Carolina.
It's a really good comparison, even though it's position to position. It's a really good comparison. But why it's such a great comparison is you could run at Jadeveon Clowney. You could run at Deion Sanders' side with sweeps, and he didn't want any part of that contact.
He wasn't out to tackle.
So he didn't want anything there. So a great comparison on both ends. Really do like that. And I really like Will Anderson. I think his sack numbers are never going to be enormous, but I think he is a generational type of talent. I think Jadeveon Clowney was a generational type of pass rusher. Now, there were some foot issues that kept Clowney from being at his utmost. And I was talking to you and Caleb Giroux, by the way, who's killing it on covering recruiting on offthehooksports.com. But I think foot issues and toe issues are a big, monstrous, huge deal because that is where all of your power comes from. So who are we talking about that we're talking about Will Levis, why he may have dropped. It could have been the big toe issue. Listen, when those things are bad going into the NFL, ask Keith Schuler. They don't usually get a lot better. And ask Deion Sanders again. That's why he eventually had to hang it up. That's where all your power comes from. So that's part of the reason why I believe Will Levis dropped as much as he did that. And he's just not very good.
Yeah. Ask Peyton Manning that last year he played at Denver when he had the plantar fasciitis and was just awful.
Yes. You don't want any part of plantar fasciitis.